10 Years Deep by L.J. Beeston. This is recorded to celebrate the 10th anniversary of LibriVox. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Ed Humple. When he heard that announcement, those simple words, "A person to see you, sir," the weight which had been pulling his heart down for so long became suddenly doubled, bringing a physical pang which burned the health in cheeks and lips to ashes, and the color of ashes. "A person," echoed Filson Straws, after his servant. "Yes, sir." He would not give a name, but insisted on seeing you. Of course, it was Legree. Harney Legree. It was not that the servant had used the non-committal word which would describe him. It was rather a swift intuition which stabbed Filson with the realization that the thing he had so long eluded would be eluded no more. "Let him come up, James," said he, briefly. Immediately, upon the soft closing of the door, the occupant of the study laid his half-finished cigar upon a groove in the brass ashtray on the huge and magnificently carved ebony desk before him. Then he got up and stepped swiftly to the mirror over the mantelpiece. He put his eyes close to the ghostly image which the crystal presented to him. He pinched his cheeks, set his strong teeth into his lips to call up the reluctant red of his blood. The door-handle rattled in a grasp, and Filson Straws turned. With a firm, strong step, his visitor entered the room. He wore a square-cut dark blue serge, coarse welted shoes, and held a bowler hat in his right hand. His face was formed on rather strong lines, and the cold blue of his eyes did not suggest that many things could frighten this man. Right enough, it was Harney Legree. But Filson did not call him so, for he nodded a half-smile and said, "You have come to see me on a chilly night, Jason. Take a chair." He accompanied this invitation with a nod to a straight-backed chair against a wall, but the visitor chose that one as a place of rest for his hat. He came forward to expand his numbed palms to the fire, then dropped, not without a certain natural ease of manner, into a big divan chair by the side of the blaze. Slowly his keen blue eyes travelled round the room. "It is very nice here," said he, in a deep, slow voice. "The noise of the West End traffic does not pass through those heavy curtains. You might be in the heart of the country." The other drew a long, a deep breath. He had to force a frown to assume a reprimand of familiarity. "Jason," he began severely, "I do not expect—" "Cut out the Jason," was the interrupting response. "You have used that long enough. You know perfectly well that I am Harney Legree." Straws put out his hands and gripped the edge of the mantelpiece. The fire warmth streamed over his cold face. He looked sideways at his visitor, who was staring calmly and reflectingly into the blaze. He went back to his chair by the huge ebony desk and sank into it. A pallid and quivering thread from his still burning cigar rose up straight as a column between him and his visitor. The latter looked round at last. He repeated, "You know that I am Harney Legree, Straws?" "Certainly I know it." "You found that out just 15 months ago, I believe." "Approximately, yes." "And all that means to you. You have not attempted to deceive yourself in regard to that?" "Not for one moment." "You understand clearly that all this ease and comfort which surrounds you is not really yours at all?" "It is not." "And that I have a right to call it mine?" "Unquestionably." "Under the terms of Anthony Legree's will?" "Under those terms." "And no doubt my reason for keeping out of all these good things is known to you?" "Perfectly." "That for nearly 3 years I have been escaping the law?" "I am aware of it." "And that it is impossible for me to claim my right without disclosing the fact that I am not a dead man, as is believed?" "Quite impossible." "Which disclosure would mean anything between 5 and 10 years in an American penitentiary?" "Certainly that." "Good. I see we have got the preliminaries." Harney stretched out his legs on the rug, and produced a pipe and tobacco pouch from a side pocket. Straws sat watching him. Suddenly the sound of a pianoforte came down from the room above this one. Someone was executing, with a mobile touch, the barcarolle of Moskowski. Legree lifted his head, listening intently. "That is very nice," said he. "Who is the player?" "My daughter, Olive." "Ah, I saw her with you one afternoon in the Green Park. She is a beautiful slip of a girl, that. But why does she impart a sadness to that thing? Then you have a boy, Straws, I believe. Where is he?" "At Cambridge. So was I. Did you know that?" "I have heard so." "At Caius. Oh, what an infernally long time ago that seems. Heaven and earth, what draughts of life I have drunk since then. But I didn't come here to utter sentiment. Far from it. You and I have been dodging the point at issue for too long. I propose to settle it everlastingly before I leave this room. In fact, I mean to." He screwed his shoulders into the back of his chair, tossed one leg over the other, gritted his teeth on his pipe. "The situation is unique," he went on. "It bristles with perplexity. The bristles warded me off for 15 months because I didn't want to prick myself. Now, just you listen with both ears. When I got into that sad mess in the States, we need not discuss that unpleasantness. I dived into obscurity like a scared rabbit. You see, I had got into a bank after office hours, and unluckily I had been given away. I was wanted bad. The police were sniffing on my trail. The one way to get them off was to make them abandon it. I contrived that by working an idea, which was quite one of the smartest of the many questionable ideas I have developed. It made me a dead man. The police found what they thought was the remains of poor me in a hut on a deserted ranch, dead of smallpox, in the fly season, with the glass steady over 100 in the shade. You know, no foul play, bear in mind. Only the police made a mistake which I meant them to make. I came to England a year and a half later, very much incog, and intending to remain so naturally. But I couldn't resist one or two inquiries into the old life I had left here. I soon got a high-tension shock that made me sit up. It seems that I needn't have quit the Sunday school side of the law at all in that bank-busting business, since, on the very eve of the adventure, Uncle Anthony had expired, and left me this more than snug nest in which you are so nicely coiled. True, his will stated that everything should pass to you, should I die, without any family of my own. But then, as you perceive, I am most uncommonly alive. Yes, I discovered that I am entitled to all this I see around me. But between me and this niceness is an abyss, impossible to jump across. Let Harney Legree claim his property, and the police in America will be looking after an extradition order. I say, one can't jump across this infernal abyss, but one can pass through it. You get me, of course. Well, I am coming to that. The next thing I discovered when poking my nose about here was that you had seen and recognized me. You would do that more easily than others. And then there is a picture or two of me in this house, which doubtless helped to jog your memory. And I soon knew you were on the scent, Straws, because you employed a man to find out as much as he could about me. I spotted him first time. All he found out was that I was playing Jason, an engineer's assistant, Shoreditch way, which was a job I got, having to live. By James, I was more than interested in the situation. I wondered ever so what you would do. The bank bustin' was known here, having drifted across. Was I afraid? Not much I wasn't. You could never expose me, for that would mean your own ruin. By all the rules of the card, Straws, you ought to have dropped me like a white-hot bar. Yet you didn't. My presence in London worried you fearfully, or else you have a conscience. What does a conscience feel like, Straws? Or perhaps you were nervous, scared, unable to make up your mind. Anyhow, you used your man as a sort of intermediate, and without showing your hand you managed to materially improve my position. That was your conscience. Good. Perhaps you were not sleeping well of nights. Now, it was perfectly clear to me that you believed I was ignorant of the fact that I had been left to find property. I had presumably dived into the underworld, had cut myself off from all who knew me, from old associates, had become a dead man, in short. You argued that the truth of my good fortune had not drifted down to me. You must have argued on those lines, because otherwise you would have expected me round earlier to do a little blackmailing. But I've never got quite down to blackmail. In the meantime, you regarded yourself enjoying all these good things, which you had no real right to handle. I guess you said, I can adjust this affair. I can pass on the property all right, but shall I, who am doing only good things with it, educating my children, putting my name to permanent contributions, hand it over for a criminal to waste? Besides which, the handing over process will send this poor devil head first into long imprisonment. This was the sort of sop you spooned to yourself. Suddenly the worst happens. The bomb bursts. Your felon tears off his mask. Here he is, sitting in your chair, before your fire. Pardon, in his chair, before his fire. And to all this Filson Straws had listened in stillness and in silence. Each rising word he crushed back. The smallest bodily movement he controlled. What sort of duel was this he was called upon to face? The thrill and the terror of it demanded all the composure he could muster. He was silent for a long time, and then he said, I will not question the general statement of the case. You have, of course, something further to say. Everything. I have spent hours, days, weeks in considering whether it would be worth while for me to face the music, to declare myself Harney Legree very much alive, to swallow all the gruel I shall receive, and then to claim all this. Now, I can make up my mind pretty smartly in most things, but the devil take me if I can come to a lasting decision in this. It isn't that I mind shoving you out. Good Lord, no. And the prospect of becoming a man of comfortable means is a live prospect, with a good big kick in it. Still, they'd send me up the river in the States for a tidy long term of years before I could enjoy what would come after. That would be exceedingly unpleasant. I reckon I should get 7 years of prison. He turned sociably to his listener. Do you think they'd serve me out more than 7? Possibly. Thank you for nothing. Suppose we call it 10. Now, I don't want to do 10 years. I shouldn't be so young when I came out. And then there's a girl across the Atlantic I want to marry. I should lose her. And she counts a good deal in this transaction. In fact, it was thinking so much of her lately that made me decide to come to you and have a heart-to-heart talk. You mean to make a proposition. I have been waiting for it. Give me a couple £1,000, and I'll let you alone to enjoy the rest. I refuse. 1,500 then. Certainly not. 1,000. The limit, mind. I will not give you 50. What? Not out of my own estate? Not out of your own estate. But, man alive, I can claim the whole boiling if I choose. Claim it. Ah, I see your drift, Straws. You think I cannot prove it. I am certain you can. Certainly I would not combat your claim. I will even help it, if that be necessary. At that, Legree sat up and stared at the other. The eyes of the two men met, and for a full minute they just looked at each other in profound silence. Legree grunted and leaned forward to knock the ashes from his pipe. Very slowly and meditatively he reloaded the bowl. It was a pause in the duel, both opponents falling back with lowered points. Obviously, you don't trust me, said Harney. Put yourself in my place, was the quiet answer. But I assure you that when I ask for £1,000, I am very much in earnest. That I believe. Well, having that amount, I shall be entirely satisfied, and you will never be troubled by me again. Hang it, man, this is not in the nature of blackmail. I am asking for a bit of my own, and a beggarly trifle at that. For the first time, Filson Straws shifted his position. He wheeled his chair round so that he faced his desk, resting his arm upon it, and steadfastly regarding Legree. You mean that, he responded, quietly. You will be satisfied, for the present. But as sure as you are sitting there, the time will come when you will want a bigger handful. The knowledge that all this is yours will never let go of your brain. And then you will come for more, I know it. In a fashion, I allow that this is not pure blackmail. But then, in another fashion, it is. You will want a second 1,000, then a third, and so on. You will bleed me slowly and surely. Of what is not yours, cut in Legree. Admitted. I never denied that. But I strongly object to being bled through years and years of my life. It will lead to an intolerable situation, which will inevitably destroy my peace of mind, which will strike at the happiness of my wife and children, which will end in utter disaster. Remember also that I could possibly be acting illegally in helping you, a wanted man. Yet that scruple would not necessarily govern me, since your wrong was not against the laws of this country. But to talk of that is to waste time. Harney Legree gripped the arms of a chair. Into his eyes came a fierce, a searing glare. He half rose, then allowed himself to sink back slowly. The heat of the sudden fury faded. He even laughed softly. "All right," said he, coolly. "This refusal makes up my mind for me. I will go through the fire and enjoy my fortune later." Straws, pale as death, made no response. "Do you think I'm afraid?" flashed Legree. Filson was silent. "Answer, curse you!" "Candidly, I think you are. Understand, however, if you can, that I do not want to build upon your fear." "You liar, Straws! But I'll make you disgorge. Hanged if I let you keep a mouldy penny." There was no answer. "If you are so confoundedly virtuous, then why didn't you give me to justice when you saw me in England alive?" "Pardon, I have not pleaded virtue." "Or perhaps yes, I see the card up your sleeve," exclaimed Harney. "You fancy that the will, in the special circumstances, will be quashed. You imagine that my crime and what will follow will oust me from my right." "Why should it? I have yet to learn that is the law. You will have purged your offense." "Then I will sell you my claim. I'll let you buy, for £1,000, all that is due me." "You cannot, without disclosing yourself." "Oh, curse you and your cold-blooded reasons! I wonder how long it would have taken you to give me away if it hadn't meant the loss of a fortune to you." Straws uttered a long and shuddering sigh. "That simple cutting of the rope is the only way," he answered despondingly. "We may talk and talk, but undo this knot we never shall." "Hear him!" cried Legree. "Why didn't you save yourself these pangs by communicating with the police?" Stung to the quick, Straws sprang from his chair, and leaning toward Harney, his palms upon the table, he said, with intense earnestness, "Behind your back I couldn't, but I'll do it now if you give me permission. Give me that, and I'll end for both of us this intolerable situation." "Heroic!" snarled the other. "Say the word, Harney." "And you'll fling away your property? You liar! You are not capable of it. No man would be." "Am I not? Will you give me your permission to communicate with the police?" "Yes." Legree spat out the word, fixing a look of blazing defiance upon Filson. At that moment the pianist over their heads entered upon the autumn of Chaminade. Involuntarily both men listened. Down upon their excited passion floated the rising moan of the after-summer gale, the scurry of the yellowed leaves, the lament of the trees, and that wild bizarre chorus of bereavement. And all this insurgence of sound beat upon Filson's heart, and he felt a dew break upon his forehead, upon his hands, and for that instant things rocked this and that way before his eyes. This moment he stood a man of means, with full appreciation of all that meant. His son's career was dawning full of promise, his wife and daughter as happy as they were unconscious of the sword impending. 10 seconds later, no more, and the gibing voice whipped him again. "You liar!" repeated Harney. Straws straightened himself. He gave the other a single glance, then stepped across the room to the telephone, on a bookshelf in a recess. He lifted the receiver. "Give me the police station," said he curtly. Legree laughed. He called out, "Don't merely ask them to send an officer round. Tell them who is here. Tell them to send for me." "Very good," answered Straws. The connection was made. "Is that the police station?" questioned Straws. "I want to speak to the inspector in charge." "That is the inspector? Well, I have—" "Stop!" rapped out Legree. "I have thought of something. Put him off." Straws handled the situation with presence of mind. He continued, "Will you be on duty for an hour, Inspector? I should like to come round and see you about a certain matter." "Many thanks." He hung up the receiver, not easily, for in his shaking grip it rattled against the clips. He turned and resumed his seat by the table. Harney stood in front of the fire, his hands clasped behind him, puffing very composedly at his short briar. A few moments ago he had been on the brink of a precipice 10 years deep. Yet it did not appear to have jarred his nerve. He said with a laugh, "I take back the liar, Straws. You meant to do it, and I didn't think it possible. You're game, I admit. Mind you, I think you are a fool, but you are not without pluck." Filson merely replied with a curious glance at the other's easy attitude. Harney went on in growing good humor. "By now we have taken each other's measure." "You have got mine," answered Straws with indifference. "By James, I have, and I mean to return the compliment. Just now I named £1,000 as my rock bottom limit. I'll knock a chunk off even that. I'll call it 700. "I cannot agree." 500 then. "You are wasting your time." "Oh, be hanged to your obstinacy," growled Harney. He turned and spat into the fire. A long silence ensued, broken only by a gurgling sound from Legree's overheated pipe. "Is it possible," continued the visitor, reflectively, "that it is the cash you are considering? Is it possible that you, having all, cannot bear to part even with that beggarly fraction?" "You are wrong there. We are going round and round in a circle," answered Straws, very weirdly. "Is it simply that you are afraid of me?" "It is simply that I steadfastly decline to admit the thin edge of a blackmailing wedge." "But I am not a blackmailer. I abhor that sort of crawler as much as you do. Do the handsome thing by me, and you shall not see my pretty face again this side of the doom crack. That I swear." "And again I answer that I cannot accept your word." "But see how hard it is on me." "That I admit. I am in your shoes here, Harney, but what can I do? It is for you to act. The remedy is in your own hands. I have shown you that I do not shrink, but you. Ah, you think that I am less plucky in the matter than you." Filson wiped his pallid forehead. "Because I interrupted your phone call, you put it down to cowardice. Now, I am going to show you, my son, that it was nothing so yellow. We will conduct this business like sportsmen. What is wanted to solve the riddle is a little respect for each other. By Jove, that is it. Look you, Straws, if you could trust me, as I want you to, would you really give me £1,000 out of the estate?" "No, I would be more just. I would give you 5,000, was the instant rejoinder. "You would?" flashed Legree. "Yes, I would. It would be a somewhat crooked arrangement, but the nature of the case is so extraordinary. I am enjoying what is not my own, yet I cannot end it without putting you in a prison." Legree put his pipe down upon the mantelpiece. "Good," said he brusquely. "We have now arrived at the idea which came to me when you were phoning the inspector. I am bound to say I admired your display of grit, and I want to compel a like compliment from you, without absolutely damning myself, for sure. You shall see I am as earnest and consistent as you. Give me a sheet of writing paper and an envelope, and a stamp for postage." Full of wonder and perplexity, Straws obeyed. The other jerked a chair to the table, and for a couple of minutes was busy with a pen. When he had finished, he read out loud, as follows: "To the Superintendent of the Criminal Investigation Department, New Scotland Yard. This is to inform you that the writer of this note is George Harney Legree, wanted in the United States of America for a bank robbery committed in Indiana 3 years back, and wrongly believed to be dead. His address is number 22, Harkeby Street, Shoreditch, known there as William Jason." Harney folded and placed this message in an envelope, which he directed and sealed, and pushed forward for Straws to see. He continued coolly: "If Scotland Yard gets this, it will know what steps to take. I shall not run away from that address, which you know is mine. But it would not help me to bolt, for they would soon get after me. Now, I want you, Straws, to write me a check for £5,000. You probably haven't that much at your bank, on your running account, but you can date it ahead for a few days, during which time you can place the cash ready for me to withdraw. To say that I trust you is to pay you an idle compliment. Please put the slip in an envelope like this, and address it to my poor but honest residence at Harkeby Street." For half a minute Filson hesitated, frowning and perplexed. Then he obeyed. Legree took both addressed and sealed envelopes and placed them side by side on top of the bookcase by the side of the telephone. He then laid a sheet of blotting paper upon the two envelopes. After this he went back to his pipe. "Here it is," said he curtly. "Press your bell and call your man. Tell him to lift the paper, take up one of the two letters underneath, without asking a single question, and to go straight across the road to the pillar box at the corner, and drop it in. You get me?" I imagine that I do," murmured Filson, very white. "Good, man. You perceive that I am not a whit more afraid than you are. It is only that I hate to go to jail for 10 years, if the matter between us can be arranged otherwise. But if it can't be arranged otherwise, then I'll go to prison, and that is my ultimate last and final word. My scheme gives you a chance, and it gives me an equal chance. Nothing but it will show you how much in earnest I am, and yet leave open a way out for us both. If you regard it as the method of a blackmailer, as the idea of one who will come again and again to bleed you white, then tear up both check and letter. If not, call your man." And Harney reloaded his pipe with care, and lighted it with still more care. Filson Straws touched the button of an electric bell. James appeared 5 seconds later. "James," said Straws, in a tone which he endeavored in vain to absolutely control, "there is a sheet of blotting paper by the side of the phone." "Yes, sir." "There are 2 letters beneath it." "Yes, sir." "Please take one of them, whichever one you like, without asking questions. Take it instantly to the pillar box across the road and drop it in. You perfectly understand me, James?" "Yes, sir." "Then do as I tell you." Without a moment of hesitation, the well-trained servant stepped to the bookcase. The action brought his back between him and the others. He lifted the covering blotting paper, picked up one of the envelopes, put back the blotting paper over the other, and went out, closing the door softly. Straws pulled at his collar. Excitement was touching his heart. Harney blew an immense cloud. Both men went slowly to a window overlooking the street. Straws drew the blind aside, and in a few moments they saw James, hatless, crossing the road. He stopped at the pillar box at the corner. He dropped in the letter. "Did you think I'd get cold feet at the last second?" laughed Legree. Straws turned and stared at the bookcase. "You look," he whispered huskily. "As you will," answered the other easily. He stepped across the room and picked up the sheet of blotting paper. "I'm a lucky swine," he laughed. "I'm 5,000 pounds richer than when I came in." He handed the letter to the police to Filson, who tore it across and dropped it into the fire. "Goodbye, Straws," said Legree. "I'm going to marry my girl, who is worth all the rest of the money." He held out his hand, and Filson put his into it. "Goodbye, Harney," said he, tremulously. When Straws found himself alone, he looked round vacantly, absently. He was dazed. What an ordeal it had been! He thought of the inspector at the local police station, who was waiting. Well, he might wait. Mechanically, he moved toward his dead cigar, which was resting on a groove in the brass ashtray on his table, and mechanically he applied a light to it. It tasted stale, spent, exhausted. But Straws did not notice that detail, for he inhaled deeply its pungent smoke, which seemed to him, in his rapture of relief, like those spicy breezes which waft over Ceylon's isle. End of 10 Years Deep by L.J. Beeston.